The cantina smelled like burnt ozone and regret. Commander Vrix'tal of the Kalonian Imperial Guard leaned back in his chair, all four arms spread wide in a gesture of absolute confidence. His exoskeleton gleamed under the dim lighting, polished to perfection, each segment catching the glow from the hovering plasma lamps above. Around him, a crowd of mercenaries, traders, and various species of questionable reputation had gathered, drawn like moths to the flame of his storytelling. "So there I was," Vrix'tal said, his mandibles clicking with amusement, facing down 3 human mercenaries on the orbital station above Centauri 7. 3 of them. Can you imagine? They thought numbers would save them. A Thorvian pilot with too many scars and not enough sense laughed, spraying purple liquid from his drink. "Humans? Those little pink things? I heard they break if you look at them wrong." The Vrix'tal's eyes glittered. "That's what I thought too, friend."
Oh.
"That's what everyone thinks until they actually face one in combat. But here's the secret, and I'll share it with you all for free." He paused for dramatic effect, letting the silence build. "Humans are predictable, emotional, reckless. Once you understand their patterns, they're easy to defeat." "Easy?" A voice cut through the crowd, smooth as silk and sharp as a vibroblade. "That's a fascinating assessment." The crowd parted like water, and Vrix'tal felt his confidence falter for just a moment. A human woman walked through the gap, her movements economical, precise. She wore standard mercenary gear. Nothing fancy, but something about the way she carried herself made every instinct Vrix'tal had developed over 20 years of combat scream danger. She was average height for a human, with dark skin and hair pulled back in a practical knot. Her eyes, though, her eyes were the color of Earth's oceans, cold and deep, and they assessed him with the kind of calculation that usually belonged to predators deciding if prey was worth the effort. "And you are?" Vrix'tal asked, trying to reclaim his authority. "Captain Mara Johnson," she said, pulling up a chair without being invited. "I couldn't help but overhear your, let's call it a war story. You fought humans on Centauri 7? "I did." Vrix'tal puffed up his chest plates. "Defeated all 3 in hand-to-hand combat. They were no match for proper training and superior physiology." Mara smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "Centauri 7.
About 8 months ago?
The station robbery? You're well informed." "I'm informed because those were my people you fought, Commander." She said his rank like it was an insult. "Tommy, Rebecca, and old man Garcia. You beat them, took the payment they'd earned, and left them stranded on that rock." The cantina had gone very, very quiet. Vrix'tal felt his secondary hearts begin to race, but he maintained his composure. "They survived then?"
Hey, good.
"I'm not a killer when I don't need to be." They learned an important lesson about challenging their betters. "Oh, they survived," Mara agreed. "Tommy's got a rebuilt spine now. Oh, Rebecca had to get her left arm regrown from scratch. Garcia? He retired. Said he was too old for this shit. You really did a number on them." "They attacked first," Vrix'tal said, but even he could hear the defensive note creeping into his voice. "They asked you to honor the contract. You decided fists spoke louder than words." Mara leaned forward, elbows on the table. "But that's not really why I'm here. See, word gets around in mercenary circles. You've been telling this story for months now. How you beat 3 Deathworlders. How humans are predictable, emotional, easy to defeat once you know their patterns." "It's true," Vrix'tal insisted, looking around at the crowd for support. Some nodded. Others had started edging toward the exits.
Here's the thing about patterns, Commander.
Mara's voice dropped lower, conversational, almost friendly. "Smart fighters change them. You beat Tommy because he was young and fought angry. You beat Rebecca because she was injured before the fight even started, still recovering from a plasma burn on her right side. And Garcia? Garcia was 63 years old, running on augments and stubbornness. I fought them fairly. Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. Doesn't really matter now." She stood up and Vrix'tal noticed several things at once. First, the cantina had cleared significantly. Second, the bartender had ducked behind the counter. Third, Mara's hand rested casually on something at her hip, something that looked suspiciously like a military-grade stunner. "But you've been using that story to take contracts, to build a reputation as someone who can handle humans. You've cost my people work. You've cost them respect. And frankly, you've annoyed me." Vrix'tal stood too, all 4 arms flexing. He still had reach on her. He still had 2 more arms than she did. He still had every advantage his species had developed over millions of years of evolution on a high-gravity world. Are you challenging me, human? I'm correcting a misconception, Mira said pleasantly. You've fought Deathworlders before. Good for you, but here's what you don't understand about humans. About real Deathworlders. We adapt, we learn, and we never ever forget. The first punch came faster than Vrix'tal expected. He blocked it with his upper left arm, exactly as his training dictated, already moving his lower right to counter-strike at her exposed ribs. The counter-strike hit nothing but air. She'd already moved, flowing around his defense like water, and something hard and unyielding slammed into the joint of his upper right arm. Pain. Actual pain. Bright and sharp, and completely unexpected. Vrix'tal roared and swung with all four arms, a technique that had never failed him, a whirlwind of limbs that should have overwhelmed any opponent. Mara ducked under the first two swings, stepped inside the reach of the third and did something with her elbow that made Vrix'tal's lower left arm go completely numb. You see, she said, conversationally, as if she wasn't actively dismantling a trained warrior twice her size. That's the problem with patterns. You just used the exact same combination you used on Tommy. Upper left block, lower right counter, then the forearm sweep. It's in the security footage from Centauri 7. I've watched it about 100 times. She swept his legs. Actually swept them. A move so simple, so basic, that Vrix'tal felt embarrassment flood through him even as he crashed to the floor. His exoskeleton cracked against the metal deck plating, the sound ringing through the silent cantina. Tommy was a brawler, Mara continued, standing over him. Rebecca was injured. Garcia was old. But me? I've been fighting since I was 12 years old. Street fights, military training, mercenary work across 17 different systems. I've studied your species, Commander. I know that your joints bend backwards at the elbow but lock forward. I know your lower arms are weaker than your uppers. I know that joint there. She tapped his secondary shoulder with her boot, making him flinch. Hurts like hell if you hit it right. Vrix'tal tried to get up. His arms wouldn't cooperate properly, sending confused signals to his brain. Nothing was broken, but everything hurt. Stay down, Mara advised. We're not done talking. You've made your point, Vrix'tal managed, his pride in tatters but his survival instincts finally kicking in. Have I? Lie? Because you seem like the type who needs things spelled out very clearly. She crouched down, putting herself at eye level with him. You beat 3 of my people when they were at a disadvantage, then spent months bragging about it. That ends now. You're going to pay them compensation for medical expenses. You're going to stop telling your little story, and you're going to spread a new story about how Captain Mara Johnson handed you your ass in under 30 seconds. They'll never believe it, Vrix'tal said bitterly. Mara pointed at the corners of the cantina, where several recording devices blinked with active lights. They won't have to take your word for it. This is being live-streamed to about 40 different mercenary channels right now. You're famous, Commander. Everyone wants to see the Kalonian who beats Deathworlders. Horror washed through him, cold and complete. Why? He asked. Because he had to know. Why go to all this trouble? You could have just ignored me. Because you hurt my people, and thought it made you special. Myanmar stood up, brushing imaginary dust from her pants. Because you're not the first alien who thought humans were easy marks, and you won't be the last. Someone needs to send a message. Today you're the message. She pulled out a credit chip and tossed it to the bartender, who caught it with shaking appendages. That should cover the damages. Sorry about the floor, Krix. The bartender, a Gelthian with too many eyes, just nodded rapidly. Mara turned back to the crowd, most of whom had crept back in to watch the conclusion. Anyone else have stories about beating up humans? Want to share them with the class? Silence. Good. Commander Vrix'tal here is going to transfer funds to these accounts. She pulled up a holo display showing 3 names and routing numbers. Medical expenses plus emotional damages. Let's call it 50,000 credits each. That seems fair for a rebuilt spine, a regrown arm, and a forced retirement. I don't have that kind of money, Vrix'tal protested weakly. Then you'd better get creative. Sell your ship.
And sell your armor.
Sell whatever you need to sell. But those accounts better show deposits within 48 hours, or I come back. She smiled again. That cold, predatory smile. And next time, I won't be nearly this pleasant about it. She walked toward the exit, her gait casual, unhurried. At the door she paused and looked back. Oh, and Commander, if you're thinking about revenge, about coming after me or mine, remember this moment. Remember how easy it was, because I've fought people like you my entire life, and you know what I've learned? Vrix'tal said nothing. Deathworlders don't get second chances. We win the first time or we don't survive long enough to learn from our mistakes. Holder. So when someone like you gets lucky once, beats a few of us when we're not at our best, that doesn't mean you've mastered us. It means you've used up your luck. She tapped the doorframe twice. A sharp, deliberate sound. And you've definitely used up your luck with me. Then she was gone, vanished into the station's corridors like a ghost, leaving behind a cantina full of witnesses and one very humiliated Kalonian commander. Vrix'tal lay on the floor for several more seconds before his pride finally allowed him to accept help standing. His arms still tingled with nerve pain, his exoskeleton throbbed, and his ego had been reduced to subatomic particles. The Thorvian pilot from earlier approached cautiously. "Commander? Are you? Will you be all right? I need to make some financial transfers," Vrix'tal said quietly. "And I need to send a message to the Mercenary Guild. I'm retiring from active contracts." "But your reputation?" "My reputation just got new footage to define it," Vrix'tal said bitterly. "And frankly, if that's what a single human can do when she's prepared, when she's studied her opponent, when she's got a score to settle." He shook his head slowly. "I don't ever want to face someone like that again." He limped toward the exit, each step a reminder of how quickly certainty could turn to defeat. Behind him, the cantina erupted in conversation, voices overlapping, already turning the last 5 minutes into legend. Somewhere on the station, Captain Mara Johnson was probably smiling. And somewhere in the universe, 3 retired or recovering mercenaries were about to receive very generous deposits into their accounts, along with a message that simply read, "With apologies, lesson learned." Vrix'tal had fought Deathworlders before. He would never ever fight one again. 3 weeks later, the Marauders' rest station hummed with its usual chaos of commerce and crime. Captain Mara Johnson sat in a corner booth of a different cantina. This one cleaner and considerably more expensive than the dive where she'd taught Commander Vrix'tal his lesson. Across from her sat Tommy, his new spine working perfectly, though he still moved with the careful deliberation of someone relearning trust in their own body. "So he actually paid?" Tommy asked, swirling his whiskey with obvious appreciation for quality he hadn't been able to afford in months. "Every credit," Mara confirmed. "Whole. Plus interest, because apparently his guild contract required penalty fees for dishonorable conduct. Rebecca bought herself a new ship. Garcia is living on a beach somewhere in the Outer Rim, sending me pictures of sunsets and cocktails with tiny umbrellas." Tommy laughed, then winced slightly. "Still getting used to the new hardware. Doc says it'll take another month before I stop feeling phantom pains." "Take your time. We're not hurting for work." Mara pulled up her datapad, scrolling through contract offers. "Ever since that video went viral, we've been flooded with requests. Half the galaxy apparently needs someone who can handle uppity Kalonians. You're famous now, boss. The human who dropped a Kalonian commander in under a minute." 32 seconds, Mora corrected absently.
And
"Roger. I'd rather be rich than famous. But I'll take what I can get." The cantina's atmosphere shifted suddenly, that peculiar change in air pressure that came when someone dangerous walked through the door. Mara's hand drifted toward her weapon before her conscious mind registered the threat. The newcomer was Kalonian, like Vrix'tal, but bigger, much bigger. Where Vrix'tal had been polished and proud, this one looked weathered, scarred, with exoskeleton that bore the marks of 100 battles. All 4 arms were covered in military-grade augments, and his eyes held the flat, emotionless gaze of a professional killer. He walked straight to their table. "Captain Johnson," he said, his voice like gravel in a processor. "I am Jan Kreeve, formerly of the Kalonian shock troops. I've come to issue a challenge." The cantina went silent faster than a power failure. Chairs scraped as patrons moved away from potential collateral damage. The bartender, a human woman with cybernetic eyes, started recording immediately. Mara took a sip of her drink, deliberately casual, not interested. Kreeve's mandibles clicked in what might have been surprise. "You humiliated a warrior of my species. Honor demands satisfaction." "Your honor isn't my problem," Mara said. "Vrix'tal picked a fight with my people, lost, and paid his debts. As far as I'm concerned, the matter is settled." "It is not settled for me." Kreeve's lower arms flexed, servos whining softly. "I have watched the footage 17 times. All you exploited weakness, attacked joints, used techniques designed specifically to counter Kalonian physiology. This is not honorable combat." Tommy started to stand, but Mara waved him back down. "Let me get this straight," she said, her voice dangerously pleasant. "You're upset because I studied my opponent and used effective tactics. That's literally what combat is, buddy. If you walk into a fight without understanding your enemy's weaknesses, you're not honorable. You're stupid." Kreeve's exoskeleton actually flushed darker, a sign of anger in his species. "I am offering you a chance to prove yourself against a true warrior, not a desk commander who earned his rank through politics. Fight me, human. Show the galaxy whether your victory was skill or simple luck." Mara leaned back, studying him. Tommy knew that look. He'd seen it before, right before the boss made a decision that seemed insane but somehow worked out perfectly. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll fight you." Kreeve's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Excellent. I have reserved the combat arena on level 7. We fight in 1 hour, full contact, no weapons beyond natural augments. The winner takes nothing but glory and respect." "No," Mara said. "We fight here right now. And when I win, you do something for me." "What?" "I want you to track down every single Kalonian who's been telling stories about beating up humans. Every warrior who's been using us as resume padding. And I want you to tell them what happened here today." She smiled that cold smile Tommy knew all too well. "I want you to become the cautionary tale." Kreeve considered this. "And if I win, then you get to tell everyone how you avenged your species' honor by beating the human who embarrassed Commander Vrix'tal. Your reputation becomes legend. You'll have contracts lined up for years." "Acceptable." Old Kreeve began removing his jacket, revealing even more augments, more scars. "Old ma'am, more evidence of a lifetime spent perfecting violence. Though I warn you, Captain Johnson, I am not Vrix'tal. I have fought on 12 Deathworlds. I have killed creatures that would terrify most sentient species. I have studied human combat techniques for the past 3 weeks, specifically to counter your tactics." "Good," Mara said, standing up and rolling her shoulders. "I was worried this would be boring." The crowd pushed back, forming a rough circle. Someone started taking bets. The bartender adjusted her recording angles to capture everything. Tommy moved to the edge of the circle, his hand near his sidearm just in case someone decided to interfere. Kreeve and Mara faced each other across 3 meters of open floor. The Kalonian towered over her, massing easily twice her weight with 4 augmented arms versus her 2 organic ones. By every logical measure, this should have been a massacre. "Ready?" the bartender called out. "Ready," Kreeve confirmed. "Born ready," Mara said. "Begin." Kreeve charged immediately, all 4 arms extended in a grappling formation designed to overwhelm and crush. It was a smart move, eliminating Mara's mobility advantage, using his mass and strength to end the fight quickly. Mara didn't retreat. She stepped forward, inside his reach, and did something Tommy had only seen her do twice before. She dropped into a combat style that most humans had forgotten, something ancient and brutal that predated space travel by thousands of years. Her elbow struck Kreeve's center mass with enough force to crack exoskeleton, all before he could react. She'd pivoted, using his own momentum against him, and her knee found the weak point where his upper left arm connected to his torso. Hold! The augment sparked as something vital gave way. Kreeve roared and swung with his remaining 3 arms, a combination that should have pulverized anything it connected with. Mara ducked, rolled, came up behind him and delivered a strike to the back of his knee joint that made him stumble. "You studied humans for 3 weeks, Mara said, breathing hard but steady. "That's cute. I've been human for 37 years. You think 3 weeks of homework beats a lifetime of experience?" Kreeve spun, faster than something his size should move, and his lower right arm caught Mara across the shoulder. She flew backward, crashed into a table, scattered drinks and data cards everywhere. The crowd gasped. Tommy started forward, but Mara held up a hand. She stood up and Tommy saw blood on her lip, saw the way she favored her left side slightly, but her eyes were bright, alive, focused with the intensity that made her one of the most dangerous mercenaries in known space. "Okay," she said, wiping blood from her mouth. "Now we're fighting." What happened next would be analyzed in combat academies for years. Mara changed tactics completely, abandoning the precise joint strike she'd used on Vrix'tal. Instead, she became unpredictable, flowing between styles, mixing military hand-to-hand with street fighting, adding moves that looked improvised but were devastatingly effective. She used a chair as a springboard to get height, came down on Kreeve's shoulders, locked her legs around his neck. He grabbed for her with all three functioning arms, but she twisted, leveraging her entire body weight to throw off his balance. They crashed to the ground together, rolled, separated. Kreeve came up swinging. Mara ducked under a punch that would have decapitated her, stepped on his foot to pin it, and delivered 3 rapid strikes to his damaged upper left arm. Something inside the augment shattered completely, sparks flying, and the arm went limp. 2 down, she said. Kreeve snarled something in his native language, probably a curse. He changed tactics too, going defensive, using his remaining 2 arms to protect his vulnerable points. It was smart, professional. Exactly what Tommy would have done. Mara circled him slowly, looking for openings. The crowd watched in absolute silence, afraid that any sound might break the terrible focus of the fighters. Even the betting had stopped, everyone transfixed by the sheer intensity of the combat. "You're good," Mara said conversationally. "Better than Vrix'tal by a mile. You've actually got real experience, real skill. On most days you'd probably beat me. Then surrender," Kreeve growled. "I will make it quick." "Can't do that. See? This stopped being about pride the moment you walked through that door." Mara feinted left, then right, testing his reactions. "This is about sending a message, about making sure every Kalonian warrior understands something fundamental about humans." She attacked again, but this time it was a feint. Kreeve blocked where he expected her to strike, leaving his center exposed for just a fraction of a second. Mara's fist found his solar plexus, the one spot where Kalonian exoskeleton was weakest, where the internal organs clustered close to the surface. Kreeve's eyes went wide. He staggered backward, all pretense of defense crumbling. "We're not strong because we're tough," Mara said, pressing her advantage. Strike after strike, finding weak points, damaged augments, compromised armor. "We're not dangerous because we're big or fast or naturally armored." Kreeve went down on one knee, struggling to breathe. "We're dangerous because we never stop adapting, never stop learning, never stop finding new ways to survive." Mara grabbed his upper right arm, the only one still fully functional, and twisted it in a joint lock that made Kreeve cry out in genuine pain. "You studied us for 3 weeks. We've studied survival for 300,000 years. There's no contest." She released him, stepped back, breathing hard. Blood ran from her split lip. Her shoulder screamed where Kreeve had hit her, and she'd probably have bruises for weeks. But she was standing, and Kreeve was not. "Yield," she said quietly. "There's no shame in it. You fought well, but this is over." Kreeve looked up at her, and Tommy saw something shift in the Kalonian's eyes. Respect, maybe, or understanding. "I yield," he said, his voice thick with pain and resignation. "You have won, Captain Johnson." The cantina exploded with noise. Cheers, arguments, the sound of credits changing hands as bets were settled. The bartender stopped recording with a satisfied nod, already calculating how much she'd make selling this footage. Mara offered Kreeve her hand. After a moment's hesitation, he took it, and she helped pull him to his feet. 2 of his arms hung useless. His exoskeleton was cracked in a dozen places, and his pride had taken as much damage as his body. "You're going to need medical attention," Mara said. "Tommy, call Doc Winters. Tell her we've got a Kalonian with augment damage and cracked plating." "Boss," Tommy said, but he was already on his communicator. Ma'am Ra looked up at Kreeve, who still towered over her despite his injuries. "You came here looking for honor. I'm going to give you something better. I'm going to give you truth." "What truth?" Kreeve asked. "That strength isn't about who wins a single fight. It's about who survives to fight another day." Halji gestured at her shoulder, already swelling. Halji said, "You hurt me. In a different situation, with different circumstances, maybe you win, but I stacked the deck in my favor. Home territory. My rules. My timing. That's how humans operate. We don't fight fair. We fight smart." Kreeve's mandibles clicked slowly, thoughtfully. "Commander Vrix'tal said you were predictable. Emotional." "Vrix'tal was an idiot who mistook confidence for competence," Mara said bluntly. "But you're the real deal. You've got skills, experience, and you actually learned from watching my previous fight. That makes you dangerous. Yet I lost. Today you lost. Tomorrow, who knows?" Mora pulled out a credit chip and handed it to him. "This is for your medical expenses. Consider it a professional courtesy, one warrior to another." Kreeve stared at the chip like it was a live grenade.
"I cannot accept this. I challenged you. I lost."
"To take your money would be smart," Mara interrupted. Because those augments are expensive to repair, and I'm guessing you spent most of your savings tracking me down and preparing for this fight. Am I wrong? Kreeve said nothing, which was answer enough. Take the chip, get yourself fixed up, then do what you promised. Find every Kalonian who's been bragging about beating humans, and tell them what you learned today. Mara's expression softened slightly. And here's what you tell them. You tell them that humans aren't weak. We're not predictable. We're not easy targets. We're survivors from a death world that tried to kill us for millions of years, and we're still here because we learned to be smarter, faster, and more adaptable than everything that wanted us dead. She turned to address the entire cantina, her voice carrying to every corner. That goes for everyone here. Spread the word. The next alien who thinks humans are easy marks better be prepared for the fight of their life, because we're done being everyone's punching bags. We're done being the setup for someone else's war story. Silence, absolute and complete. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in. Within seconds, the entire cantina was applauding, humans and aliens alike recognizing something fundamental that had just been declared. Kreeve took the credit chip with his remaining functional hand. You are unlike any human I have encountered, Captain Johnson. I came here believing I understood your species. I was wrong. Most people are. Mara said. The trick is surviving long enough to correct your misunderstandings. You did. Vrix'tal did. Now go forth and educate the ignorant. Kreeve actually laughed, a harsh chittering sound. I will. And Captain, if you ever need a Kalonian warrior for a contract, one who truly understands what humans are capable of, you have my contact information. I'll keep that in mind. Doc Winters arrived 10 minutes later, took one look at Kreeve's injuries, and started cursing in 3 languages. She dragged him away for emergency repairs, still muttering about warriors and their complete disregard for their own body integrity. Tommy slid back into the booth next to Mara, who was holding ice to her swollen shoulder. You okay, boss? I'll live, though I'm definitely feeling my age after that one. She grimaced. Kreeve was no joke. If he'd caught me clean with that first charge, this conversation would be very different. But he didn't. But he didn't, Mara agreed. Because I spent 3 weeks since the Vrix'tal incident training for exactly this scenario, I knew someone would come looking for revenge. I knew they'd be better prepared than last time, so I got better prepared too. That's the human way, right? Always adapting? Always, Mara confirmed. She pulled up her datapad again, scrolling through the new contract offers that had appeared in just the last 30 minutes. Word traveled fast in the mercenary community. We've got offers from the Centauri Consortium, the Rigel Trade Federation, and something called the Deathworld Defense Initiative. They're all asking for the human who beat 2 Kalonian warriors in under a month. Are you going to take any of them? Mara smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Maybe, but first, I think we've earned a vacation. Somewhere quiet, peaceful, with good drinks and no Kalonians looking for revenge. Does such a place exist? Probably not, Mara admitted. But we can dream. Outside the cantina, news of the fight was already spreading through the station's networks, jumping from system to system, carried by traders and mercenaries and anyone with a datapad and a story to tell. The video would be analyzed, studied, broken down frame by military academies and fight enthusiasts across the galaxy. But the real story, the one that would echo through cantinas and barracks and mercenary halls for years to come, was simpler. It was about a human captain who had faced down warriors who should have crushed her, who had won through preparation, adaptation, and sheer refusal to accept defeat. It was about a species that had climbed from the bottom of Earth's food chain to the stars themselves, carrying with them every lesson that terrible, beautiful Deathworld had taught them. It was about the moment when the rest of the galaxy finally started to understand what humans really were. Not predictable, not emotional, not easy. Survivors. And in the cold mathematics of the universe, survivors always found a way to win. Somewhere on a medical station, Commander Vrix'tal watched the footage of Mara's second fight and felt a curious mixture of vindication and relief. Vindication because his defeat no longer looked like a fluke. Relief because he'd gotten off easy with just his pride injured. Somewhere on a medical station, Commander Vrix'tal watched the footage of Mara's second fight and felt a curious mixture of vindication and relief. Vindication because his defeat no longer looked like a fluke. Relief because he'd gotten off easy with just his pride injured. Somewhere in the outer rim, Garcia sipped his cocktail and laughed until tears ran down his weathered face. then sent Mira a message that just said, "That's my girl." And somewhere in the black between stars, on a ship heading toward the core worlds, Captain Mara Johnson closed her eyes and slept the deep, dreamless sleep of someone who had nothing left to prove. At least not until tomorrow.